Hello, this is Colin. It's another lovely day here on the West Coast. I'm relaxing with a bit of Ms. Grey and taking up once again the story of tea. Now, last time I was talking about tea, we were in England at the end of the 17th century when tea was still a very expensive commodity, restricted to the upper classes and the richer merchant class. And tea was often served in the home by a lady, not by a servant, by a lady, in order to show off her refinement in being able to serve tea and to serve tea in very delicate china without breaking it. The tea was locked up to prevent the servants from getting at it. The tea was presented by the lady or the gentleman of the house on some occasions. Anyway, so about 1714, there was a fellow named Twinnings who ran a coffee house just outside of London city limits. I guess it would have been then at Daru Court on the Strand. Now he had quite a choice location because it was considered at the time just outside the city of London, and it was near the law courts, so his customers included lawyers, attorneys, and such. It was also near the homes of many of the rich and aristocrats who had townhomes in the city, in London. So there'd be dukes and duchesses and counts and countesses living in the neighborhood. He also, amongst his customers, he also had naval officers, the clergy, military officers, just about anybody with a really respectable vocation, or if you're an aristocrat, lack of. Anyway, so his coffee shop business was doing so well, he expanded next door and opened up a tea and coffee shop. Now, this was quite revolutionary because before that, women were not allowed into coffee shops. So if a woman wanted to buy tea, she would have to send a servant or her husband off to the coffee shop to buy tea. But this was now a place where a lady, a class, could go and buy her tea. And buy tea they did. So you can imagine, these carriages of these wealthy people, particularly the wealthy women, coming out in their amazing long dresses. And inside would have been Twinnings himself with open chests of tea that people could inspect, and they could actually have the tea blended on the spot by Mr. Twinnings himself until the customer was satisfied with the blend of tea that was created. Now, like I said, tea was still, at the beginning of the 18th century, tea was still a very expensive commodity, mostly because of high taxes. The East India Company had a monopoly on selling tea to British people. There was a 14% duty on tea imports, and on top of that, there was an excise tax, which worked out to something like 5 shillings a pound. And in 1723, it was, 4 shillings a pound. 1745, 1 shilling a pound. And as the excise tax, when the cost of tea went down, the popularity of tea exploded. Here I can quote you a few numbers. Between 1741 and 1745 in Britain, 800,000 pounds of tea were sold. From 1746 to 1750, 2,500,000 pounds of tea in that period. By 1784, when the taxes were lowest, 8 million pounds in 1 year was sold in Britain. And it wasn't too long before the end of the 18th century, 12,500,000 pounds of tea were being sold in Britain in 1 year. Now, obviously, the cost of tea was coming down. The popularity of tea was exploding. It seemed like as soon as people could afford it, they wanted to get their hands on tea. Now, One could argue that I suppose tea was seen as socially prestigious. It's something the rich people did, so there's something that we should have. But I think you can also make a good argument for the fact that people in Britain just love their tea. Anyway, next time we'll be talking about the dark side of tea at this time in Britain. So please tune in. Cheers.